I really feel like my daughter's birth was a symbol for God to show me that we're not just these human flesh beings, right? We're more than this. And when we can tune into that during our life here on earth, we can experience miracles. We can experience all the abundance in the world because that is our birthright. That is who we are.
And you transcended some of the spiritual gifts into studying and practicing Reiki. Hi, I'm Deepika, Sandhu, the CEO of Soul Sparks Press, and I am so excited today to be in conversation with Soul Sparks Press author, elementary school teacher, Reiki master, Rosaly Didonna. Rosaly, welcome!
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I am so excited to have you here because you're writing a really beautiful book with us right now that I think is going to absolutely captivate readers out there, because you talk about this beautiful awareness that started to come through you when your daughter was very sick in an ICU after her birth. And in those moments, there was so much that you rose up and understood about yourself in those moments. And can you take us back to that moment and all the things that happened when your daughter was born?
Yeah, she was born at the beginning of the pandemic, May of 2020, and she was born at 23 weeks, 1.5 pounds. So she fit right in the palm of my hand. And it was very unexpected. I thought I was teaching at the time, and I thought, okay, great. I get to have my maternity leave at home and teach from home and teach the kids from the computer. What a great opportunity, because I was pregnant at the time. And then, spontaneously, my water broke. I was put on bed rest immediately and told to stay pregnant for as long as I could. And luckily she stayed in there a little bit, close to a week more in the hospital. But, I've read stories online where some hospitals wouldn't even look at you at 22 weeks and they would say it's an abortion at that point. You have to terminate the pregnancy. And so my husband and I made the decision. I still remember that day very vividly. The head doctor at the NICU came in and asked us, like, do you want to continue this pregnancy? Because less than a quarter of a chance of her surviving, leaving this hospital. And even if she does, she would have, 2 or more very serious disabilities. So I will leave that in your hands. And I was kind of like, well, how do I get this far and not continue with it? And I knew I just wouldn't be able to live with myself if I gave up. And so I decided in that moment to go all in. And I still remember him asking us, he was like, okay, so you want full resuscitation? And I said, well, what is that? Like, what's full resuscitation? And he explained, like, we're just going to do everything we can to help her and make sure she's stabilized when she comes out. And I said, yes, have that. And later on, after she leaves the hospital, and I'm sharing this story with the Catholic school I was working at the time, a priest overheard my story and he was like, I respect doctor so much. With all due respect, that was a resurrection, not a resuscitation. And I feel like just that snippet or that remembrance of those moments is a great way to kind of explain shifting from the conditions of this human experience to a more spiritual experience. And that's been my journey. And that's what I'm here to share with people.
And being there, hearing all these things that doctors are telling you, you really had to tune into what you believed, what really felt right to you in that moment. And there was nobody there with you, right? We're talking about early pandemic days, going to the hospital. You were really very alone there, but I think that probably served you in some ways because it allowed you to really tune into what you wanted to do in that moment, what you were feeling called to do in that moment.
Yeah, and that's 100% true. I thought, gosh, what have I done to deserve this? Like, I thought I was being punished. I thought, oh God, I looked back, thought, okay, what did I do this or what? But what I realized after moving through all that, I realized there was a reason why it happened during the pandemic. Like you said, nobody was allowed in our room. I could only go in and see her myself, not even with my husband, the first, months or so. And it was really a way for me to face all the things that I needed to in order for God to show me, like, you're unshakable. When you surrender all the hardships in life to me and move from this place of oneness with God, you know that everything's going to be okay. And it did, and it was. So
But in those moments, did you feel unshakable or were you really shaking?
yeah, they call it like the roller coaster of the NICU, right? You go in and each day there's just something. It's like, okay, well, she's not breathing well and she needed to be intubated. And next it was like she had brain bleeds on either side and there's a hole in her heart that's not closing on time and all these things that they don't, she could be blind. And it just felt like one thing after the other. And I thought, like you said, because it was just me there, I realized that was a blessing because if there were so many people around sharing their opinions, their energy all haywire, like worried, fearful, concerned, then that would have had a different outcome because it was an opportunity for me to take control of my own state of being. And I feel like it was a training grounds for me to hold this frequency of who I am as a child of God, as one with God.
God put you in the situation to shepherd your child through this situation, and now she is a healthy, thriving young girl.
Yes. Totally. They had numerous checkups afterwards to make sure she was okay, and she's completely 100% healthy, whole, a normal kid. Nobody would ever think that she was in the NICU for that long.
This is incredible, and I think what's also incredible is your spiritual journey moving through this, like this being in the hospital, being on your own, dealing with all of this, shaking to become unshakable, was really the spiritual transcendence for you that kept happening in other ways as well as you move through your life and you starting to empower and use your spiritual strengths in your life.
Yeah, totally. When my daughter was in the hospital, I thought, God was really pointing me to learn more about Jesus. And before this, I was never super into religion. My parents were Catholic, but we didn't go to church or do any of those things. I remember praying to God and saying, like, okay, if she really does come out of this 100%, I have to be a believer at that point. And I have to learn more. I have to do more because when I look back at my journey, there were always signs and symbols of him leading me to that place. Like, I worked at a Catholic school, I worked at a Lutheran school, kids were teaching me about the faith, and I just thought, so silly that you guys believe in that, you know? But they knew something I didn't, and now I just see that it was divinely orchestrated all along, and I really feel like my daughter's birth was a symbol for God to show me that we're not just these human flesh beings, right? We're more than this, and when we can tune into that during our life here on earth, we can experience miracles. We can experience all the abundance in the world because that is our birthright. That is who we are truly underneath it all.
And you transcended some of the spiritual gifts into studying and practicing Reiki. So tell us how Reiki came into your life.
Yeah. So after my daughter exited, the hospital, we're living a normal life as parents. I was still experiencing a lot of anxiety. And, some people might say, okay, maybe it was post traumatic stress from being in the NICU. And we had a series of just hardships, not just our daughter's birth, after that. And so I was really suffering a lot, like mentally. And I thought, okay, I have to do something because the doctors tell me there's nothing wrong with you. Your blood work's fine. You're doing good. But I knew something didn't feel right. So I tried a Reiki session locally with a Reiki master in my area. And I had a very profound experience. And I thought, okay, I need to learn how to do this all the way up through master level. So I trained all the way through. And even after that, I had so many things that shifted for me and kind of broadened my awareness of what all of this meant. And one of the experiences that really stood out to me was, our teacher was leading us through this. You do a lot of meditations and guided things. And there was one where I was asking God, what's the meaning of all this? Why am I going through this? Why I have to learn Reiki now? And then I learned about the Catholic faith. I did all that. And like, what does this all mean? And I basically I felt two light beings come down and touch me on either side of my shoulder. And in that moment, I felt the most transcendent, like peace and love and acceptance ever. And I just, suffering for so long and then feeling that peace in that moment and that love just pulsating through my entire body. And they told me, like, you are going to start a business and you're going to name it The Purifying Place. And I thought, oh gosh, it's so very specific. And you're going to help lead people through their suffering, through what you were able to transcend and help them do that as well. And you need to share your story. And so I did that and I've been doing that. And that's what's led me here.
That's incredible. And with all of this now, you've taken everything that you've learned, all the things that you've studied, all the experiences that you've had in your life, and created your business where you're helping people really get into their soul's alignment. So, how do we know if we're in alignment with our soul?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's so interesting because after I trained in Master Reiki, something didn't feel balanced. And so God told me, learn spiritual coaching, learn spiritual life coaching. I found the school on the spot. I saw the woman who owned the school. I was like, that's her, signed up. And she's still my mentor to this day. But after I went through that process, I was uncovering so much of me that I didn't realize was still in there in my subconscious about all those limiting beliefs that we all have that tell us we're not good enough or we're not smart enough or how could you do that? You don't have the financial means, all these like ideas about ourselves that have been imprinted on us through our childhood, through our upbringing, that we maybe because we're not in that experience anymore, we think, oh, well, we're fine now. But like, a lot of people say like we're 95% of the show is run by your subconscious. So when I paired the Reiki with the spiritual life coaching, that's when I saw huge change in my life and now help my clients do too, because we don't realize that we're constantly working against ourselves. We're constantly working against our programming, which leaves us burnt out, unfulfilled, questioning our existence, leading us down paths that we think is right for us, but it's really what somebody else or society says we should want. And how do we recenter ourselves in the truth of who we are so that we know we're living from that place that is God's will, that is our highest will in life? And so when we can kind of strip away all the things that we're not and tune in to that connection that we have with source, with God, with the universe, whatever you call it, leading from that presence and that state of awareness is what creates this new experience for yourself because you're truly living at that point from a place of freedom. And I didn't realize this. So much of my life was just acting out past experiences with different faces and different times. And once I really got to the root of why that was happening and released that, it changed my life.
Does God want us to be fighting against ourselves?
No, I mean, God, so we're all returning to that awareness of oneness with God, with all that is, because we're all essentially one. And what is happening is we're having all these wants in life, thinking that's what's going to fulfill us. Thinking if I just make my parents happy, if I just get the degree, if I do the coaching, whatever it is, that is going to fulfill something inside of me that isn't whole. But the truth is, we are whole. We're 100% whole and abundant, and we are one with everything. We're one with God. And what's happening on this human realm is we have limited perception and a capacity to hold that awareness. So the more that we can broaden that and shift that awareness, the more we can move in sync with what our true essence is beneath all that.
I love this. Your wisdom is so profound, and the way that you share it is so beautiful. And this is why I know your book is going to be absolutely incredible. You're still in the process of writing it, but I'm so glad that you came today to share your story with us. It is absolutely going to be a game changer, I think, for so many people out there.
Thank you.
If you are ready to bring your sweepingly inspirational story to life, you have a home here at Soul Sparks Press.